funny, and the jokes were so, like, it was so good. Like, amazing how politically incorrect and funny it was.
And then I began to have this thought, which is, who is this show for?
I came to this because I heard that it was a response.
And it was, in my mind, more than a reaction to Bloody Andrew Jackson.
A more broad kind of social commentary.
And I think it spoke not only to that, but to a much larger framework in terms of identity, Native theater, and also racism in the theater today.
I'm a mixed race person, and I really connected with a lot of the stuff that was said about representation and racism in the arts.
It makes me think a lot about what is my solidarity to like the Native movement in New York, and how am I, being a good ally or not being a good ally.
Then it became so much more broad in terms of like the historical context of how Native American people have been represented through art.
Their sort of clever use of satire mixed in with, I think, a lot of historical memory that wasn't present in Bloody Andrew Jackson, but I think in most theater in New York, period.
It's one thing to have the members of one race doing something about another race, but when you have that race sort of poking fun at itself, that's not as inherently, I would say, dangerous. Not as inherently dangerous as another culture making fun of a culture that is not theirs.
I don't know about the comparison technique of like comparing oppressions. I think that it's a strategy that can be really useful, but also can lead people into a direction that maybe is more divisive than unifying. And the artists are right that minstrelsy is generally not acceptable anymore, thank God. And so pointing out that those Old West things and all of that is very much in the same vein is important.
Just reframed it in a way that makes you think about what does it mean to be an audience member as well,
yeah,
which I think
an active audience.
An active audience member, and what's your role in what's happening on stage and how it affects you.
So it made me think more about how, my experience as a Native person also relates to my experience as a woman, my experience as being Black, my experience as being queer.
I was really moved by just hearing women's stories from their own mouths.
What we're sort of trained to be as audience members or as people is to be really passive.
I felt really glad to be hearing and seeing art being used so poignantly.
Much of it was effective in communicating what we had talked about with the issues, with the idea that it's a work in progress and there's still more work to be done to make it even more effective and to reach even a broader audience if that's the goal.
I really enjoyed this show, very talented cast.
And to watch the actors over the course of a few rehearsals begin to own it from their own perspective and change the meaning of the language was sort of a lesson, I think, for me, in how that can be possible when you give people something that has issues behind it that they believe in.
Muriel did an amazing job with this.
The other thing I thought was exciting was to watch Mir Miguel direct not only the work that her daughter had made, but these members of the community who had very different perspectives on the material, and there were arguments in the process. There was something really generative and very community oriented about that. And then Muriel came in as an elder and just said, "This is how we're going to do it," and that was really satisfying and really empowering to see the elder come in and take that role.
Where do you think it goes from here?
I don't know.
As far as this piece, where will it go?
Yeah, or the response to this, to both shows.
I think that if it continues to grow, it's going to do nothing but open more dialogue, which is great and sounds like the mission.
I mean, just like bringing this dialogue and this series of problems to like places where the dialogue isn't happening or places where it is already happening, and just to kind of broaden the scope of this dialogue.
I think people are not educated about that. Cool.
I think that it'll be interesting to see how the collaborators who are sort of in charge of the process, adapt it. I think it will change for every venue if it gets a venue. So that's my impression at this point.
Oh, rhythm is our business.